We all love the feeling of trying out new beauty items, but have you ever stopped to think about how these items have changed over time? In this video, I'm going to show you some everyday beauty items that have changed throughout time and how they've impacted the world of beauty. Hello lovelies, my name is Laura, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about everyday beauty items that have changed through time. Some have changed for the better, while others may have changed for the worse. But one thing's for sure, these changes have definitely left their mark on the world of beauty. So let's take a look back at some of these iconic products and see what made them so special. So the first item is the hairdryer. There's no mistaking the sound of a hairdryer. That distinctive whoosh has been a part of the daily beauty routine for generations of women. But have you ever wondered how the humble hairdryer came to be? The first hairdryers were actually invented in the 1800s, but they didn't become widely available until the early 20th century. The earliest models were large and bulky, and they used hot air to dry the hair. This was an extremely time-consuming process, and it could often damage the hair. Over the years, hairdryers have undergone a major transformation. Today's models are much smaller and more lightweight, and they use gentle air technology to dry the hair quickly and safely. In fact, some of the latest hairdryers even come with built-in ionic generators that help to reduce frizz and static. So the next time you reach for your hairdryer, take a moment to appreciate all the amazing engineering that has gone into making it the indispensable tool it is today. From its humble beginnings to its modern incarnation, the hairdryer has come a long way indeed. And let's dive into the history now. Women have had a lot of difficulty taking care of their hair throughout history. They used a hot iron bar straight from the fire to curl it even during the reign of the Assyrian monarchs, and that sounds painful. In the Elizabethan era, women used lard to style their hair, which attracted rats and forced them to sleep with their heads in cages to prevent nighttime nibbling. And French women used cow marrow to style their hair in the 1700s, and who wants to have the fragrance of a piece of meat in their hair? And this is only a sample of the frightening procedures that women subject themselves through in an effort to look beautiful. Yes, beauty has always been painful as long as we can remember. Therefore, it is not surprising that women eventually had to dry and style the hair by putting their heads inside caps that were connected to hoses to gas stoves and other heat sources. Like many fashionable businesses, the interesting history of the modern hairdryer began in France with a massive device that looked more like a torture chamber than a beauty item, and it progressively developed over the 1900s. The hairdryer also altered as women's roles in their households and the wider society evolved. It is difficult for modern ladies to comprehend the idea that women didn't always wash their hair once a week. It's amazing that women cleaned their hair at all, given that they had to transport, heat, and pour water into a tub. And we think we have it bad scheduling our washing around our workout days. I mean, I only wash my hair once a week. Hair washing was a major occasion that required careful planning and organization to pull it off. Women should strive to use hair shampoos every 6 weeks, according to the marketing for the very first products that were sold. How long did they wait before washing their hair? Women often avoided washing their hair in favor of using perfumes and other aromatics to cover up any stench, and they wore their hair in styles that minimized the appearance of filth for individuals in close proximity to them. I feel like my scalp would be so itchy. Women would wash their hair and then dry it by sitting next to a heat source or by sitting in the sun until their hair was thoroughly dried. As you may expect, this was rather an ineffective approach. As civilization developed, particularly with the introduction of electricity in the 1880s, new methods and concepts for hair care also evolved. The ability to employ artificial heat and wind to induce your hair to dry more quickly was nothing short of a revolution, and it completely altered the lives of women at the turn of the 19th century and beyond. The first hairdryer was described in full and used for the first time by Alexander Ferdinand Godefroy in 1888. A lady would attach one end of the hose to the hot air outlet of a gas stove and the other end to a cap on her head, allowing the hot air from the stove to heat and dry her hair. Even a steam escape valve was present to prevent the woman from boiling her head. Women at this time had complex hairdos that they curled on top of their heads, teased into updos, or accessorized with feathers and other items. Sadly, Godfrey's invention was not particularly quick and accomplished nothing to reduce the time to dry because it was unable to circulate the hair. The size was another issue, and its awkwardness was simply unusable. Blowing out hair from the 1920s to the 50s, in 1911 the first hairdryer patent was issued. A hairdryer that could be held in the hand was made possible by other inventions from the National Stamping and Electric Works, U.S. Universal Motor Firm, and the Hamilton Beach Company. As there was no way to blast the air out of early models without a blowing mechanism, creators advised connecting it to a vacuum cleaner. Early versions were still cumbersome despite being handheld. Additionally, they were difficult to control at 2 pounds. Imagine being unable to control the direction the air was blowing while carrying a 2-pound weight for the duration of drying your hair. Yes, that would definitely get tiresome. In the 1920s, hairdryers really gained popularity. Both a heating element and a fan were included in these hair dryers. Before this time, women didn't wash their hair every day or very frequently at all. They used updos to conceal the grime and perfumes to mask the smell. However, flappers went out and cut their hair during the Roaring 20s. The hairdryer became a necessity for them since they wanted a quicker way to style their hair. The hairdryer industry was forced to develop more effective models by the blatant behavior of women at this time. Having tidy, lustrous, fluffy hair is the 20th century phenomenon, as Cornell University's Rachel Maines, a technology historian, put it. Women also needed a quicker way to dry their hair since they wanted it to be clean, lustrous, and fluffy. A woman's hair needs to be cleaned more frequently when it was shorter to prevent it from looking stringy and oily. The time when ladies could cover up their stink and grime with updos and other styles has long since passed.
Try Shave brand new Beauty Locks portable hairdryer. It's smaller, it's faster, it's guaranteed to give you the hair you've always wanted in half the time. The dryer weighs only a pound and easily fits in your head. With a speedy motor that will dry your hair in as little as 25 minutes, you can get gorgeous hair without falling behind schedule. Don't worry about the little ones or that pie in the oven. Thanks to an extra long extension cord, you can move around while primping your locks. Forget those long trips to the salon and no more waiting for hours under monster machines. Shave gives you an easy and speedy hairdo that will blow your man away. Get it now at your nearest Macy's.
The hood hairdryer rose to prominence in salons starting in the 1930s and truly taking off in the 1950s. The woman's hair was entirely dried under a hood hairdryer, which also evenly dispersed heat across her scalp. The salon became a setting for women to interact with one another thanks to this invention and the shift in women's roles in families. And as World War II came to a close and more women entered society and the workforce, they developed a greater sense of pride in their hair's appearance. For many women, the salon served as a home away from home and a place of community. The enormous hood dryers made a lot of noise, but either the woman would converse and laugh over it, and they would enjoy reading magazines or having just a silent moment to themselves. According to The Atlantic, the picture of a row of ladies leisurely reading magazines beneath a hairdryer hood became an emblem of post-war prosperity and of women's increased leisure time. Early 1950s were crucial years for the hairdrying industry because of the leisure lifestyle that women were experiencing and the desire to profit from it. In an effort to capitalize on the popularity of salon dryers that dried hair uniformly and all over, a bonnet hairdryer was promoted in 1951 as offering women the best of both worlds.
It's the new Lady Sunbeam Jet Set hairdryer with the self-storing hose. It's so fast that it actually dries hair in an average of 22 minutes.
Even though it was stated that you may move around your home while using this full helmet-style dryer for ladies, most of them just sat in one spot. Many of the advertising showed ladies using it while on the phone, suggesting that there was still companionship to be had with a home hairdryer. And I have a few of these vintage ones. The hairdryer saw numerous advancements in the middle of the 20th century. The dryer was made easier for women to use in 1954 when General Electric relocated the motor within the casing. With the tremendous developments in polymers and the strengthened electrical motors of the 1960s, the hairdryers became much lighter. And there's many safety issues with the hairdryer. Because of a hairdryer, many innocent people tragically lost their lives, which raised serious safety concerns. When hairdryers accidentally fell into the bathtub, people were electrocuted. Even very small children passed away. When a hairdryer was plugged in and sitting next to the tub, it was risky to relax in the tub. Many women who attempted to dry and style their hair close to the sink and a mirror suffered an untimely death by electrocution. The sink offered no better luck. Manufacturers began to take safety more seriously in the 1970s. To prevent unintentional electrocution, ground fault circuit interrupters were required in all dryers by 1991. Fewer individuals die from electrocution each year as the number of electrocution deaths have drastically decreased since this technology evolved. The hairdryer's history falls into the era of female rebellion known as the 1960s.
You get when you realize your hair is beautiful can be yours at home.
They needed a quick, safe way to dry their hair so they could leave the house on time as more women entered the workforce and women's freedom. They were able to get the current haircuts they desired thanks to the higher wattage strength of more contemporary hairdryer models. Handheld hairdryers eventually developed the strength to compete with salon models in the 1970s.
The speed style. And look what else it has. A concentrator for those tough to dry places. And it's fast. 3 drying speeds for easier styling. And it's fast!
In addition, dryers were actively viewed as a sex symbol because of the attractive women and their big hair. Women were entering the job market in greater numbers, and the introduction of handheld dryers gave them a simple way to maintain their beauty routine. At this point, a blowout, remember Farrah Fawcett, began to develop and has clearly stayed. So the 1960s and 1970s were the beginning of the blowout. The most recent upgrade to hairdryers occurred in 2016 when Dyson opted to redesign the device. They aimed to revolutionize hair drying in the same way that they did when hand dryers across the country were developed. Although they did alter the design by placing the engine to the bottom, the move appears to have been more for show than to significantly affect wattage and drying time. There's an obvious demand for speed in hair drying because approximately 90% of houses have hair dryers today. The days of letting things air dry out in the sun or next to a fire are long gone. You can pick from a few options while looking for an ideal hair dryer for you, and I actually have a vintage inspired one that's pink but it looks like it's from the 50s. And next we have shampoo. Hans Schwarzkopf, a chemist and pharmacist, learned about the violet scented powder hair wash from a client who had seen it in England. Women use soap produced from animal fat, vegetable oil, and alkaline salt to wash their hair before this, dating back to 3000 BC. According to tradition, women in this era would grow their hair extremely long and just compile it on their heads. When it became extremely oily and filthy, they would wash it with soap. But it did not smell pleasant, according to James Jordan, brand manager of care and style for Schwarzkopf Professional. The powder smelled better and it was less messy to wash your hair by combining it with water. Hans started selling it in his modest Berlin drugstore before expanding to other parts of Europe and Russia. In 1927, Hans introduced the first liquid shampoo, which blended the water and powder in a single step, simplifying the hair washing process, though most people still only shampooed every other week. Then in 1933, Hans introduced an improved version, the first liquid shampoo that wasn't alkaline, under the name Onakali. According to Jordan, earlier recipes stripped the hair of all oil and debris, but over time, people started complaining that it was mattifying their hair, so they produced a gentler version without the soap. And in 1934, in the United United States, Procter & Gamble released Drene, a liquid soap substitute that was manufactured with synthetic solvents and is the most similar to the formulas currently in use today. Shampoo is the most important hair care product to have been created in contemporary history, and its creation marked a pivotal moment. And in the 1940s, the first commercially available powder dry shampoo was Mini Poo, which was created with an earth-like clay substance. Over the years, several powders were employed to absorb excess oil in the hair, and I honestly thought dry shampoo was a new thing. I can't believe it dates back to the 1940s. And in 1961, the first anti-dandruff shampoo on the market was Head and Shoulders, which contained zinc and a compound that took researchers 10 years to develop, but is currently the main component of shampoos designed to combat flaking.
New from Procter & Gamble, Head and Shoulders, a dandruff shampoo that works.
In 1971, Coleraine introduced its spray form dry shampoo with nettle in France, which was intended for a few mums to use in the hospital, but has since become a global hair essential. In 1975, Batiste launched spray dry shampoo in the UK, and American hairstylists would fill their suitcases with it before leaving London, and that's the dry shampoo I still use. I didn't realize it was that old. It's now the best-selling mass dry shampoo in the United States. And before Batiste, a lot of people would use baby powder to solve their oily hair disasters during a fashion shoots.
Only Batiste has a complete range of wet and dry shampoos and conditioning rinse for greasy hair. Batiste leaves your hair fresh and gleaming.
In 1980, Coleraine developed new formulas, including its favorite dry shampoo with oat milk. Now I kind of want to try that brand again. The invention of 2-in-1 technology in 1986 revolutionized the shampoo industry. According to Jenny Thomas, lead scientist for P&G Hair, before this, shampoos were solely for washing, and you couldn't mix conditioning compounds into them for added care advantages without a total disaster. P&G ultimately discovered the solution, which was called Pert Plus, and the technology produced a significant change in the market. This product was so versatile compared to regular shampoo.
Now, with Pert Plus, I just wash and go.
Pert Plus, shampoo plus complete conditioner in one.
Businesses could now customize both the level of conditioning and the level of washing from low to high. I bet like vintage shampoo just completely strips your hair, so this was definitely revolutionary. Now let's look into hairspray and the history of hairspray, another everyday beauty product that you use on your hair. You can see that historically, women wore their hair up a lot by browsing through timelines of historical hairstyles. In an era when one wrong step could leave you knee-deep in horse excrement, buns, braids, and updos provided ladies an opportunity to show off their sense of fashion while also keeping their hair long and out of their eyes. But before aerosol hairsprays were invented, have you ever wondered how ladies in the past fashioned these challenging hairstyles? Let's examine the development of hairspray to learn how earlier women managed to prevent their curls from tumbling. Bandoline, the Victorian lady's best friend, we shall begin our examination of hairspray in the Victorian era. Even though we are aware that ladies maintained their updos with a variety of things earlier, including wax, grease, and sap, but in the Victorian times, a commercial substance called bandoline was offered as a kind of pre-hairspray. Bandoline was a liquid used to make hair sticky that was made of watered down tree gum, a few teaspoons of rum, and a dash or two of perfumes like rose oil or almond essence. To avoid giving the idea that the hair wasn't naturally cone-shaped, the transparent liquid held their hair in place but didn't show on the strands. This substance was so popular that Victorian women soon stopped using hair wax altogether in favor of bandoline. Flapper girls and their finger curls. The 1920s flappers' short, bobbed hair was surprising and divisive because women have customarily worn their hair long since antiquity. While short hair cannot be styled in beautiful, complicated updos, it does require a particular maintenance. One, with the aid of styling gels, did flappers maintain their lovely, flowing finger curls. The hair gels locked in the curls so every hair stayed in place all day and night, regardless of how many fountains you jumped into, similar to the waxy, sappy products of the past. And World War II technology aids the hair care industry. And during World War II, technology helps to aid the hair care industry. In order to spray insecticides and eradicate bugs in the Asian jungles, the US Army created aerosol cans in 1943. Fluorocarbon-based pressured cans allowed for forceful, reliable, and precise spraying. Though they weren't the best thing for the ozone layer, in the 1940s this was a cutting-edge technology, and when the war was done, engineers looking out for the environment looked for new applications for aerosol can technology. Spray cans and hairdos. Workers in the hair care industry had recently created chemical polymers that resembled resin, and when applied to the hair had effects similar to Bandoline but in a more portable, user-friendly form. This chemical substance, like the historical natural resins, could hold hair in place even when it was styled into an updo. One of the first companies to use the new aerosol cans to apply hair resins was the National Mineral Company, subsequently renamed the Helen Curtis Company. Despite the fact that Curtis's products was known as SprayNet, she invented the phrase hairspray in 1950 to refer to any sprayable resin hair holding devices. Hairspray and the 1950s hairstyles. The famous 1950s hairstyles would have not existed if aerosol hairsprays had not been created. You get to determine if this is a good or terrible thing, but I love the 1950s looks. Pounds of hairspray were required for certain styles, like the bouffant, to maintain the massive poofs in place. The hairsprays that made the styles possible were also responsible for other 1950s hairdos that required curling, teasing, and upsweeps.
Use Revlon Satin Set. The pin curl spray set. In just 5 extra seconds, you can set pin curls that last twice as long.
And hairspray in the 1960s. The hairspray industry was not immune to the dramatic shift of the 1960s. Hairspray had the highest sales of any beauty product in the first half of the decade. Many women relied on hairspray to keep their hair looking fresh and coiffed, and presumably freshly scented, in between hair sessions, because hairsprays were so powerful that they only needed to wash and set their hair once a week.
Away with that problem. Try Hidden Magic, the perfect solution. Holds without being sticky.
There were stylist competitions to determine who could create the most intriguing, gravity-defying, alien-looking hairstyle. But things started to shift at the end of the 1960s. Youth culture gravitated to a more nonconformist, and women were eager to free themselves from the baggage that comes with gender stereotypes imposed by society. They went for long, flowing locks and more simple, natural haircuts. But that didn't mean that commercial hairspray products were no longer made. A light hold is beneficial for all hairstyles, even the easiest, most natural ones. And moving into the 1970s, the transition from aerosol cans to pump bottles was one of the largest changes to hairspray in the 1970s. In the 1970s, environmentalists learned that the chlorophyll aerosols were destroying the ozone layer and ruining everyone's fun. It just isn't the same without that terrible hiss, so while aerosol was being phased out, some hairspray makers chose pump bottles, while others employed chlorophyll-free hairspray cans. And moving into the 1980s, the return of hairspray dominated the 80s. The 1980s featured a lot of curls, punk spikes, and sky-high tease bangs that required a lot of hairspray. White Rain and Aquanet in particular came to represent the decade of the 80s. And hairspray was used by hairdressers to keep their hair standing up and high. And now let's dive into the curling iron. Have you ever wondered how a curling iron was ever invented? And I actually wondered this myself. In actuality, I was using a curling iron to style my hair, and I wondered how that came to be today. And this inspired me to research the history of curling irons into detail. And it was very interesting to see how this magical electronic device evolved. And when was the curling iron invented? The first curling iron patent was reportedly acquired by Sir Hiram Maxim in 1886. However, the curling iron is frequently credited to Frenchman Marcel Gratteau. The gadget was credited to him in 1890, and the design was patented by Marcel in 1905. Curling tongs were being utilized by early Babylonian, Assyrian, Persian, Greek, and Egyptian civilizations to create intricate and ornate hairstyles long before Marcel and Hiram entered the picture. These tools were frequently exclusively available to the nobility class. Curls were a method to flaunt riches and social standing. Because of this, it truly varies on who you ask when the curling iron was first created. And what kind of curling iron was the first? As you may have guessed, the original curling iron didn't look anything like the modern one. The early curling irons didn't have a barrel design, they had tongs, and they definitely resembled gardening shears. The tongs were heated over gas burners because they were being used before electricity was created, and the hair suffered greatly from this. It definitely damaged it, and undoubtedly it led to a lot of accidents. And we'll get into the electric curling iron in a bit, but this was the early answer for curling the hair. The Marcel waves were produced by Marcel using his proprietary tongs. The chic waves, which resembled a finger wave curl, were made by using hot tongs. This was the most widely worn haircut in the 1920s. And how long ago did the curling iron exist as it is today? Since its inception, the curling iron has progressed a long way. When practically everyone had access to electricity, the curling iron underwent its first significant improvement. The first electric curling iron was patented in 1959 by Frenchmen René Leverrier and Roger Lemon. After 1960, almost every woman owned a curling iron. In 1965, additional barrel diameters were added to enable the creation of various curling varieties. And it's interesting that the curling iron took a lot longer to get into the hands of the public than the hairdryer. Curling iron that is most comparable to the one we use today didn't arrive until 1980. The creator was Theodora Stephens. She made it far more user-friendly by including a spring and a way to regulate the barrel's temperature. When the Z curl was developed in 1987, stylists had a greater freedom and creativity in the looks they could produce, but only specialists could access it. It didn't take long for a consumer version to be developed because customers wanted to achieve their own looks at home. Since then, the curling iron has been getting better and better. There are numerous various barrel sizes and shapes. Curling irons that are automatic and don't even require a plug are currently available. There are versions without clamps, and nowadays even Marcel's curling irons are still in use. It's amazing to think about how much our everyday beauty routines have changed over the years. We now have access to hair dryers, hairsprays, curling irons, and shampoo that weren't available even a few decades ago. And while some may argue that these new products aren't necessarily better than the old ones, there's no doubt that they've made our lives a lot easier. So the next time you're feeling frustrated with your hair, take a moment to be grateful for all the technology that's available to help you achieve your perfect hairstyle. And thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below which decade you like the best for hairstyles. Alright, don't forget to check out some of my other vintage videos. See you soon. Bye!